Shout out to the gayest podcast out there with Ross and Callum, jiujitsuoracle.
It's the best preview show of the biggest grappling event of the year. It's CJI 2 weekend taking place in Las Vegas. That means that us in Britain will be watching the event in the wee small hours of Saturday and Sunday night. But make sure you tune in. I think it's streaming live on the B Team YouTube channel. And if you're like us and you're going to be watching it with your breakfast the next day, get up and check the stream out. We're going to run through all the matches that we know are definitely happening in this first preview episode. And then in our second preview episode, we're going to talk about the hypotheticals. So we're going to call it who we think are going to be in the semifinals and then the final. Put all that out ahead of the event, and then we can see if we're right or wrong. And let us know in the comments what you think and what you're predicting. Right, I'm Ross. That's Callum. Let's get into the matches. We know the bracket now. The first match that we're going to assess is the New Wave Warriors against the Amercas Gorillas. Callum, what are your thoughts on this match overall? And then we can get maybe into the nitty-gritty of how we think it will play out relative to the individual grapplers involved.
Yeah, I think New Wave have the better team. Obviously, we've spoken about the rankings of each team in prior videos. Had New Wave top 3, top 1 at one point, but maybe that's up for debate now that they've replaced Big Dan with Wagner, but they're still definitely one of the top 3 teams. America's team has definitely got some really solid guys like DeAndre Corby, Elijah Dorsey, Taylor Pearman, and looking forward to seeing how Pat Downey does as well. I think he can cause some damage in some matches, but yeah, overall, definitely going with New Wave at this point in time.
Right, I agree. New Wave, heavy favourites here. I've seen online this match, people try to create storylines in the match. They're suggesting perhaps it's the Danaher Drillers against the Souders Eco guys. So that could be a theme in this match. Let's run through the New Wave team. We've got Dorian Olivares, Mika Galvao, Wagner Osha, Giancarlo Bedone, and Luke Griffith.
Yeah.
Against America with Gavin Corby, DeAndre Corby, Elijah Dorsey, Taylor Pearman, and Pat Downey. So now I've said those guys, talk to me about, one, some interesting battles you'd like to see across that, and two, how you think the coaches might play it, who they might send out first, who they might save in reserve, etc. So first off, out of all those names, who do you want to see have a tussle?
Definitely want to see DeAndre versus Mika. I think I spoke about that in the matchups I was excited to potentially see, so definitely want to see that. Mika versus Taylor as well would be a good one. I think we've already had a match recently with Elijah and Mika. I don't think it was like the most exciting match, so I'm not necessarily super excited for that. Might be more exciting under this rule set though. So I'm obviously picking Mika in a bunch of different matches, but I think DeAndre versus Dorian as well. They typically compete in the same weight class, ADCC. I think stylistically that would be a really interesting clash. And then I'm interested to see how Pat Downey would get on against Luke Griffith and how he would match up against some of the best guys in that higher weight class in Jiu-Jitsu.
I think you mentioned before in our previous video, which if you haven't seen it, check it out. Check out all the content that we did prior to this event. There's loads of videos there. Taylor Pearman against Giancarlo Bedone might be interesting. What about Pat Downey against Dorian Olivares in a battle of the two wrestlers?
Yeah, I think that would be quite funny to see. Obviously, Dorian kind of bulldozes people with his physicality and wrestling, but I think he's beat in those two aspects against Pat Downey, so that might be fun to watch, but don't think it'd be too competitive. I think Wagner versus Taylor would be quite interesting as well. See if Taylor can get anything going against someone like Wagner. You know, his teammate or training partner Owen O'Flanagan had some moments against Wagner, but ultimately found it very tough to finish him. So that could be an intriguing match as well.
Yeah, I think Dorian against either of the Corby brothers would be a good scrap. I think Elijah against Wagner would be interesting in seeing, not because I think it would necessarily be the most interesting, exciting 8 minutes, but I think we could see like an interesting battle, and I'd like to see if Elijah's done well sort of standing up to people with big threats. And I think like I'd like to see like the younger Elijah standing up to like the older vet Wagner trying to like implement that game that he plays, and how does Elijah react to it? Is Elijah able to get anything going against him? I think like just psychologically that could be an interesting battle, a different vibe. It's not going to be the same tear up as like Dorian against a Corby brother, but something else that we could see.
Yeah, and I honestly think Dorian against everyone on the other team except Pat Downey, like I think he could give them all a pretty tough match, to be honest. I think him versus Pat Downey would probably be like the Hulk getting a hold of Loki in the Avengers film and throwing him around. But I think Dorian against 66 through under 99, he could give any of those guys a pretty tough time.
You know, it would be interesting because we said we hope to see Taylor against someone who'd engage. It's like Dorian against Taylor, because Dorian would go for it against Taylor.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't always get to see the best of Taylor when he's up against a guy who doesn't engage as much. Like you said, that match against El Monstro at the previous ADCC, like nothing really got going. So that could be a good match, and it could give Taylor the chance to like react to something that Dorian's given, which would be good to see.
Quite as big a size difference on paper compared to what it actually is, given the fact that like Taylor's a small 88 and he's representing the under 99 spot, and then Dorian's like extremely physical for that weight class as well. So on paper, 66 versus under 99 might seem a bit ridiculous, but I think Dorian can definitely match up a little bit physically with him.
All right, and the reason we're talking about potential matches that are taking place is because it's not the situation where guys play their opponent in the same weight class. So anyone could face anyone, and it's down to the coaches who faces who. And also, like, the coaches only name their first grappler, and then thereafter it's decided basically on a match-by-match basis. Winner stays on. If you draw, you're both eliminated. So there's a huge, like, the potential matchups within the two 5-man teams, like, anyone could face anyone. So that's why we're running through it like that. But yes, agreed. New Wave, you'd favor to edge this, right?
Yeah.
You know, they'll come through, I think. I could see some of the matchups we just talked about being draws after the 8 minutes, but I can't really see too many of the American guys beating too many of the New Wave guys, and I think vice versa. Like, New Wave favored in quite a few of the matchups, if the ones we've chatted about, to get the victory in them. So New Wave goes through, we'll say, right? And they're going to play in the same half of the bracket, and this is an interesting situation. Either the European Raiders, and I must say I'm not really on board with some of these team nicknames that have been given, but it is what it is, right? They're called the European Raiders, so I'll call them that, against the Atos, and I believe their name, although I think they're pretty much just going as Atos, but I have seen a nickname of the Atos Knights online, but I think they should just go with Team Atos. It's better. So the interesting thing here is, like, the winner of this plays the winner of the match we previously talked about, which we think is going to be New Wave. So we get a New Wave v Atos semi-final, and that means B team are in the other half of the bracket, and then we'll get into that more in the future, but you can see kind of like how the bracket's been laid out, right? Anyway, Europe against Atos. Europe, Owen Jones, Pavel Javorsky, Paul Ardilla, Charles Negromonch, Marcin Makovic against Atos, Pato, Ronaldo Jr., Hulk, Kyan Duarte, Philippe Pena. We're going Atos for the win, right? I don't think that's too controversial a pick. Let's get into some of the battles that we could see.
Yeah, so obviously Atos has the better or more experienced grapplers, but they've also got pretty much everyone on their team is like at the right size, or like actually pretty big for the weight. You know, like Ronaldo's a big 77, everyone else is at their correct weight, whereas Europe's got a few guys going up in weight as well, which is like even more of a factor swaying towards Atos. But yeah, I think just because he's wanted the match and he's called for it, like, be interested to see what Owen Jones could do against the Kynan or any one of those bigger guys. Don't necessarily see it going very well for him, but I would have said the same thing about Lachlan against Kynan back in the day. So we will see. Rematch with Owen and Pato would be good to watch. And then Pavel, I think, can definitely give some bother to some of the guys as well and get a hold of their legs if he gets into the right positions.
Yeah, that's the two European guys I'm most interested in seeing. I think it's a tough ask for the European team to pick up any wins. I could see there being a couple of draws in 8-minute matches.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think this first round match, I can't really see someone like Pena being submitted, Kynan being submitted. Maybe get an interesting battle with someone like Hulk against Ardilla, because they can both wrestle, play guard a little bit, be on top. Like you could see like an interesting tussle there. But yeah, I think this one's probably got less exciting possibilities than the first match we chatted about.
Definitely.
And I'd favour Atos to come through. Okay, so then in the bottom half of the draw, first match we'll talk about is the B Team Mercenaries against the Daisy Fresh Demons. B Team, Ethan Crownston. Pardon?
Why do they not go with Bulls? Like, where the hell's Mercenaries coming from?
I have no idea. This is what I mean. I'm not firmly on board with any of the nicknames. But they're called the Mercenaries and they've got camel kit. So that's the thing now. Doesn't really matter. It's probably the last outing of the B Team as we know it. They'll be called something else in the future by the look of things. So it's the B Team Mercenaries, Ethan Crownston, Joseph Chen, Chris Bodrick, Nicky Rod, Victor Hugo against Daisy Fresh Demons, Max Hansen, Donnie Leon, Jacob Couch, Michael Pixley, Brandon Reed. What in there could be interesting? And who are you picking for the win?
I think Joseph versus Dante would be interesting to see. I think Joseph versus Couch would be interesting to see as well. Couch's guard and leg locks versus Joseph's passing. On a technical level, I would put Joseph ahead of Couch, but Couch has got the physicality advantage as well, so that could match up quite well. Other matchups.
What about Pixley against Nicky Rod?
Well, we did see that on the UFC Fight Pass, but it was quite a good match, and I would be happy to watch it.
Also, 8 minutes.
Well. Yeah.
8 minutes, Pixley against Nicky Rod can push the pace, can Pixley keep it on the feet or get a takedown. Brandon Reed be interesting against maybe against Nicky Rod if they have a wrestling battle. I think less interesting Brandon against Victor in terms of like Victor's jiu-jitsu would just be too much. Yeah, Couch against Wojciech in a leg lock battle.
Yeah.
Dante against Joseph or Ethan could be interesting. Max against Joseph or Ethan could be interesting. Overall, are we saying B Team's got too much for them?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think anyone on the team is going to be able to take out Victor or Nicky Rod, and then I think they're going to have a hard time with like Joseph Chen and that as well. So, yeah, a lot of depth and peak talent on B Team compared to Daisy Fresh.
Fair enough. So we're saying B Team go through and they will play the winner of the Australasia Devils, which I think is the nickname that makes the most amount of sense for the team and area involved, against 10th Planet, who I've seen referred to as either the 10th Planet Terrestrials or the 10th Planet Aliens. You can see what they're trying to do. One is alliterative. One is using alliteration. And one is much shorter and easier to say. So we'll go 10th Planet Aliens, right? Anyway, I think this is an interesting battle, right? Bracket-wise, the way it looks to me like it's been set out is perhaps Atlas were the 1 seed against Europe 8. Perhaps New Wave were the 2 seed against America 7. B Team 3 seed against Daisy Fresh 6. And then we've got this 4v5 battle. I think maybe 10th Planet with their history in quintet got the nod to be the 4th seed. And Australasia being the best of the continental teams. And then maybe just ahead of Daisy Fresh as well. It could be argued. It is subjective. But I think this is a good 4v5 battle. And it's the one first round match. It's the biggest toss-up as to who goes through. So why don't we just I'll quickly run through the participants. First off, give me an overall picture as to how you think it'll go, and then we'll maybe get into some of the individual battles that could take place. So Australasia line up with Fabricio Andre, Kenta Iwamoto, Lucas Kennard, Belal Echebarri, and Declan Moody. 10th Planet line up with Gio Martinez, Alan Sanchez, PJ Barch, Ryan Aitken, Kyle Bame. First off, who do you think is going to win and why? Second off, some individual battles you're looking forward to that could potentially happen.
Yeah, I think it could definitely go either way. I think 10th Planet has got the best grappler in PJ Barch, and I think Australia's got a bit more depth. So, like, Fabricio, be excited to see him in pretty much any match. I don't see it Fabricio versus 10th Planet at 66 or 77 being very competitive, but I think you could have a good match with PJ or the under over 99 guys. And then PJ versus Kenta could be an interesting one. They're both pretty well versed on the feet. See PJ come ahead in that. But yeah, and then Lucas against Ryan Aitken could be a good leg lock battle, but at the same time, these kind of matches where both guys are good at leg lock can also be pretty boring as well. So it depends how it kind of shakes out.
The way I looked at the teams was thus. Fabricio and Kenta in the lighter weights, I think, have a big advantage over Gio Martinez and Alan Sanchez. I think the middle two, PJ Barch and Ryan Aitken, are favour over Lucas Kennard and Belal Echebarri, but I think it's much closer. And then right now, I'd put Declan Moody, based on recent performance, a bit ahead of Kyle Bame, although not by much. And if they have a match, could be an 8-minute draw. But just in terms of like trying to decide who goes through, I just think that the lighter guys in the Australasia are ahead a lot versus 10th Planet. And actually, those lighter guys in Australasia can play well against much bigger opponents. We've seen Fabricio do it historically, and Kenta, I think, with his wrestling, his determined style, his durability, I think he can give a good account for himself against higher weight classes. So for that reason, I'd pick Australasia, and I think it gives it a more interesting semi-final matchup, because then you would get B team against Australasia and two of the Australasia grapplers in Kenta and Declan train at B team. So you get a little bit of an interesting gym situation there. Even although when it comes to 10th Planet, I would like to see them, or rather specifically PJ Barch, against anyone. You know, I think he's one of the grapplers to watch in this event. So we'll say the semi-finals we're predicting: New Wave v Atos, B team against Australasia. We'll get more into those matchups in a second preview episode that will come out ahead of the event starting on Saturday evening US time and in the wee small hours of Sunday morning UK time. Let's talk about a couple of other matches that we know are going to definitely take place over this weekend. Anything hypothetical will be in the second preview. We've got the super fight now being Craig Jones against Chael Sonnen after Gable Steveson withdrew. Just a quick thing from me on that match. I think on the one hand, like as a grappling fan, I don't really care. I've seen it before. I don't think Chael's got enough for Craig, etc. Right? It's a bit of a banter match. On the other hand, Gable withdrew very close to the event. There's not really much time to do anything. It's very limited in who Craig could potentially go against. there's a lot of guys tied up in this event. There's a lot of guys tied up contractually in other promotions that wouldn't be allowed to compete, etc. So they're really limited. Chael's put his hand up, got involved. He's an interesting, engaging character. This match is not designed to be one for the grappling geeks like you and I, who will get excited about a niche matchup that like within the team format. We're going to get loads of exciting, interesting matches along the weekend. It's more to get other people's eyeballs on the event. Chael Sonnen, big personality from MMA, but I think his brand extends even outside of MMA. And you know, we're getting into like people who don't follow MMA that much, but they kind of know who Chael Sonnen is. So I think we'll get an interesting banter match. There'll be Chael, there'll be Craig, maybe a microphone involved, maybe a Laranja, bit of a spectacle, bit of a thing before the final just to give everyone a break. Match itself, not that excited. But I think you've got an idea as to like how the match could be a little bit more exciting. So why don't you pick up with that?
Yeah, so it's obviously nice of Chael the first time around to let the up-and-comer Craig Jones get that win at ADCC. But I think if Craig plays his old game where like he was an active competitor where he just went for the legs relentlessly, don't see the match lasting very long. But I think if he plays his newer game, his game that he's more known for now and is like using to be like an anti-Dagestani style, the match will be a lot more interesting because, you know, he might stand a little bit with Chael, he might even get taken down, and then he can use his like octopus guards and his get-ups and reversals and all those kind of things to make it a lot more of a fluid and interesting match, rather than him playing guard and having Chael kind of like stalling or Craig just pulling him into some sort of submission. So I think in that context it could be quite an exciting match. And then it would be interesting to see even giving up some positions against Chael. I think Craig would be fine to get out and make the match a bit more entertaining than if he was to just go for the kill off the bat.
Yeah, I don't think Craig will come out and just try leg lock Chael immediately. I think there'll be a bit of a gentleman's agreement. And I think Craig probably knows that his jiu-jitsu, wherever the match ends up, will be too much for Chael, so there'll be some play. Can't really see Chael submitting Craig, so I don't really think Craig should be too concerned about where the match goes. And I think ultimately Craig can get to a position to submit Chael, you know, in a relatively short time frame from where Craig makes that decision to like up the gears. So yeah, it'll be a spectacle. And that's what they're going to look for in it. Right. And very quick, we'll try and keep it to 2-3 minutes just for the length of the episode. The women's bracket, we've got on one side, which I'm really interested in that they decided to make this the first round matchup because I thought they might try and make it the final, but it's Adele Fornerino against Helena Crever. Although I don't mean any disrespect to the other athletes that are taking part. Like, it might not have been the final if they set the bracket up differently, but I think maybe the bracket could have been set up thinking, oh, we'll keep Adele and Helena apart. Maybe they both win their first round matches and then we get them in the final. But no, they've gone with those two in the first round. So we'll chat about that. And then on the other side of the bracket, we have Ana Carolina Vieira against Sarah Gaval. So the two first round matches, let's give a quick summary as to who we might win and progress. So first off, Adele v Helena.
Yeah, I think it's from the perspective of each side of the bracket's got an ADCC champion. It kind of makes sense. And also it's good that like the match that maybe people want to see the most, they're just going to give us that guaranteed. So that's nice as well. But yeah, as far as that match, obviously Helena is a really big name and she's definitely on the up and up, and her technique and everything's going to be progressing really well with the gym that she's under. But have we seen much of Adele since her amazing ADCC performance? I can't really think of
Fionn
matches she's been in. Can you?
The Fionn match.
Fionn, yeah.
Where Fionn got a narrow judge's decision, and I understand why the judges gave it that way, but in the match we saw Adele attempt a leg lock on Fionn that we think caused some damage, and was a pretty close attempt, even although Fionn didn't submit to it. So we could say that like Fionn edged the match, but in terms of like who was closer to getting towards a submission, Adele was closer. And like Fionn pretty much still is like pound for pound the best female grappler out there right now, I would say. So I think Adele is on really good form. And like you said, not seen as much of her coming out of ADCC, or certainly we haven't, but that was the one match that is in my mind. So anyway, continue, please.
Yeah, and obviously Helena's got the size advantage, but given the fact of how Adele did in the absolute, she submitted Brianna St. Marie with an armbar, Rafaela Guedes, who's a very, very physical competitor, with an e-bar, and then she beat Bia Mesquita in the final. I would edge towards Adele, just given what she's actually achieved in competition compared to Helena, but wouldn't be surprised if Helena managed to come out and win the match. Should be some interesting leg lock exchanges if it goes there. Might get to see Helena's passing on display a little bit more, given that Adele is smaller and very guard heavy. So looking forward to the match, but I will edge towards Adele.
I think that's fair. And on the other side, Anna Carolina against Sarah. What do you think?
Yeah, so it's an interesting one. I think I would edge towards Anna because she won ADCC most recently. Not seen as much of Galval in Nogi, and I think is it her rookie year at black belt this year, or maybe her second year at black belt. But she beat Helena in the gi at brown belt, I think, and she looks like a very strong physical grappler, really good passing, just very solid positionally. So I wouldn't be surprised, especially given her age and how much she's going to be progressing athletically and technically, at her stage of development. I wouldn't be surprised if she's made another leap and she does go ahead and win the match against Anna, but I just think you have to go for Anna in this matchup, given her achievements in the no-gi scene.
Yeah, I'm taking Anna based on experience and based on the Anna I saw last year at ADCC. He looked very, very impressive, but I agree it should be another close match. And I think credit to the matchmakers for putting together an interesting tournament where we're going to get two seemingly very close semi-finals and then possibly a very close final.
Was there a reason Fionn wasn't in the tournament
I think
that you know of?
anyone who wants to find out about all that, I think there's a lot of different stuff came out online. So I don't want to paraphrase comments from Craig and Fionn and stuff that I heard. Obviously Fionn competed in the UFC. There was various different ideas as to her contractual situation. I don't know the truth of the matter. Can I say that? So I don't want to say one way or t'other. I think Fionn as well came out of that match. I think maybe the tournament didn't exist, right? And then it's actually been put together relatively short notice. Perhaps Fionn's had other commitments. She's now one of the main coaches at a gym in London, so she's moved back there. And she then had the match against Adele, which I think probably would be the match that would be the most interesting and exciting in terms of two people at the peak of the game going against each other in women's grappling. And then, yeah, so maybe it was a combination of factors as to why Fionn's not here. But I think it's I think people should go, there's lots of stuff out there. I don't have a definitive. I don't want to paraphrase based on memories of chats that were happening online 2-3 months ago. But it's a valid question. And I think maybe at the end of it all, we'd love to see Fionn take on the winner of this. And did you see Fionn's back in the gi and was competing at World Masters?
Yeah, I saw that. And I saw Faris as well, who's the coach of the European team, won Masters Worlds at black belt.
Yeah. Good to see. And obviously we've got Masters Worlds happening going into this event. So loads going on in Vegas this weekend in terms of grappling. Right. That's it for our preview of the matches we definitely know that will happen. We're going to do a short preview of the hypotheticals, the semis, and the finals that we think will happen as part of the build-up to the event. So tune in to the next episode of the Jiu-Jitsu Oracle to get that.